which can work on offline and basically asynchronous basis. But the main issues which we have found is again that making a solution which can cater to the device variability which is available on ground, and also in low signal and trying to get the sync functionality work in low to medium signal conditions, because even the data quality and the data packs which they have and the data packs which we have, because when we go there, is very different. So that is one area where we will be trying to work more and understand that user case more. But like you said that these people are able to use all the other apps. So in my experience, what I have seen, there would be one shopping app on their phone which could be Shopee, Flipkart, or these things. If these are young girls, they would have Snapchat also. So high data volumes. I think Snapchat has more data volume than even WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is on everyone's phone and our main mode of communication also with them during any field drives which are going on. So they are heavy multimedia users, but whenever it comes to developing a solution, I don't think we are able to optimize it to that level, to the level of YouTube or WhatsApp, to be able to work and basically buffer in those conditions. So that's where we are currently facing.
So why do you think, the way very good, so why do you think we are not able to optimize it to a YouTube, Shopee, WhatsApp level?
I'm not sure because I am not, I don't work from the developer side, on the developer side.
तो आपने डेवलपर को पूछा कि भैया क्यों नहीं हो पा रही है, अगर WhatsApp वाले कर दे रहे हैं तो तुमसे क्यों नहीं हो रहा है?
So WhatsApp, I'm not sure how YouTube is able to send videos at very low signal strength also. So if that logic we could have implemented, or we are trying to, now we are reworking on our sync functionality. So I'm not sure what the backend logic and where that lies. But if we are able to do that, and ultimately WhatsApp, YouTube, they are also highly optimized. Like in 2013 when we started using YouTube, it used to buffer quite a lot, but now it doesn't. So how that has evolved is something basically where the logic is.
Because of the infrastructure availability nowadays in past days, it's because of the YouTube's increase.
It's both. It's both. We can say like it's been on both ends.
So let me paraphrase. तो क्या हम ये बोल सकते हैं कि प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे टेक्नोलॉजी में है, यूजर में प्रॉब्लम नहीं है?
यूजर में इतना प्रॉब्लम नहीं होना चाहिए क्योंकि एज सच ऐप यूज कर पा रहे हैं वो विदाउट मच ऑफ लर्निंग कर्व एज वेल. We have tried it with new users, we have tried it with trained users. They are able to use the app, but it's just that the same functionality, because even in my organization I asked them how is Service ETO, let's say, is able to do it. It also has offline sync. Google is able to do it with Sheets, like Sheets or anything we can use online, offline. So one of the earlier things which I was trying in my previous organization was try to make the app or a basic MVP using Google App Sheet. So just so that it can give us input and output in Excel, and we are able to try out how the user will react to an app using a zero cost solution. Yeah. So where I am coming from is I'm trying to understand the constraints in building a new tech solution for such a use case. Why do we face such a constraint even when we have the best talent? I think even at the Nudge we have the best talent who have worked across industries, and still we are unable to crack the situation just in case anyone else has this experience.
Anybody wants to respond?
Sir, please.
Hello. Yeah, my experience, I'm Bhugun. I work with an organization called WOSCA in Keonjhar district of Odisha. So currently we are using one tech platform. So that is basically we have a database of it's a project of maternal and child health care. So, kind of real efficacy at the community level, what are the government functions that is there for the poor people, whether they are getting it or not. And it also supplies the due list for the community worker and the government facilities also. So I see normally it's a Abni app, let's say. So many of our CRP, there are 85 CRPs there on the ground, and out of the 85 CRP, there are nearly 70 women. And I've seen all the women, they're able to operate the smartphone, and they're able to open the app. So the problem is that their qualification is matriculation or less. So they're able to enter the data and send it. They're able to do that. But whenever there is some addition, then some modifications are there. So they're not able to cope up immediately, even after also after some training also. They're not able to. Second, they're very comfortable with 10 to 12 screens immediately. After that, they kind of sometimes suppose one pregnant woman has a due list for the services. So if they put yes, pregnant or not, then if they put yes, then the other screen will pop up. So they tend to forget and sleep some things. So it's a kind of, the technology should be like that. It has to be restricted within, not that it's a long list of things. That's my concern, actually. So education doesn't have anything to do with the technology operating and things. Yes, technology, they are operating many things. But when in development, so somewhere they are not able to cope with the, the addification or addition, and that's the thing.
Because in our case, that has never been a problem. Like they are able to easily adopt the app, any new updates. We give them basic training or just tell them about it, and we obviously have a support team on that. So that has never been a case. Learning curve has never been a case. Something the answer lies more on the technology. UI side.
So it's also motivation.
No, so
What
they are able to do
motivation?
that when they are alone. But in the, suppose in the VHS center, it's happening at the community level. In that platform, there will be many around 30, 35 women, they will be there. So many people, they have to remember some data, and they will write in the paper-based format, then they will get it updated in the mobile-based format. So somehow that is some problem on there. Maybe it's a
A question I'd like to ask. One of the things we have seen is that when you are designing data capture, people just go overboard. मतलब पूरी दुनिया का डेटा चाहिए होता है। किस दिन चीख आई थी, उससे पहले कब आई थी, उससे पहले कब आई थी, है ना? गाय को कब धोया था, उस दिन चांद निकला था कि नहीं? Right? Every single thing. So do you think that also? So why is that?
Actually,
why
I
are
am
we
just
not able to say कि we keep it small, keep it simple, keep it small? So आपने भी बोला कि 10 to 12 screens तक they are able to manage. उसके बाद it just goes out of hand.
but the donor agency, somewhere they have some kind of tech people, and they are interacting with the tech people, those who are developing. So the conversation of both, that is always resulted in, ये हो सकता है, but ये जो पार्टनर एजेंसी एनजीओ है ना, उनका ट्रेनिंग देने का थोड़ा सा प्रक्रिया बढ़ा दो, अच्छे से कर दो, तो थोड़ा सा बैंडविड्थ बढ़ा दो कम्युनिटी में, उनको कम्युनिटी ग्रासरूट पर वर्क करो, so उनका थोड़ा बढ़ा दो. But we need some of the data that we may require at some point of time to verify a data of 1 year analysis. I don't know.
Actually, the problem comes there only when the systems are so top down. They think that we might need this data. They do not realize that data collection also has its own operations, and the CRP has a very reduced bandwidth. They have so many things, other things to do, and you are paying a person only 500 rupees or let's say 300 rupees per day, and you are last few months, what will it help in? Like it's the data, it's collected in a format that it becomes difficult to analyze also. So we have data, but we can't analyze it. So we have to keep pushing for rationalizing the data points which are required. This has been my experience.
You know, regarding this, what Dobun is telling, we also use this M1. The problem is with these tech people. You know, there is no participation of the community member or CRP or organization. They just thought that these are the data points and you have to do it. You know, they have also some kind of a limitation. So it was a lot of, technical glitch also. So many times, every time somebody is there reporting this is not happening, it is never corrected, nothing was there. That was the issue. It was completely a one-way traffic only. Whereas, in a different experience, we conducted 320 panchayat social audit. And we developed, with our partner agency, we developed a app. At that time, social club, you know, there was a. So with them sitting, then the team came with us, and we developed the whole data point. Then it was so good. Even the CRPs, community mobilizer, not even matriculate, 4th, 5th pass. My experience is that they are excellent tech people and they have a lot of interest in doing it. It is not at all a problem from their side. That some kind of a network issue, mobile is not, and sometimes capacity is not so much. But the problem lies with these top people. They never, and they think that we will do everything and these people will only follow. They are not ready to listen also. So this is the story. And let me introduce myself. Myself Vidyut. I am working in south of Odisha, the tribal districts, and we are working on it's an integrated approach, health and nutrition, land rights, and also with livelihood issues, especially NTFP based livelihood. So recently we completed, on the issue of commons, we completed 10 villages, a mapping of the commons and the resources, whatever is available within the commons. And 10 tribal women, they mapped the whole commons. The mapping was a comparison of 40 years. So in 60s, what was the status of commons, and at present, what is the differences. At the same time also, 1 decade comparison of resources. Suppose these are the NTFPs, which was in such quantity and the numbers, how many numbers NTFP and what is the present status. ये सारे लोग जो गांव के वुमेन है, they are semi-literate, not पढ़े लिखे हैं नहीं, ट्राइबल इलाका में. तो उसको हम लोग completely cadastral map लेकर, तो it was a woman focused program, गांव के लोगों के साथ तो उस निकला. फिर हम लोग सोचे कि उसको क्यों ना कैसे ऐसे बना जाए कि सभी लोगों को ये समझ में आ जाएगा. Rishabh helped us in doing that digitally, how that can be look. Rishabh will give his own experience. हम लोग बहुत बार बैठे ऋषभ के साथ, हमारा टीम, कि ये क्या है, उसको कैसे करने सारे लोगों को पता चलेगा. That was very good. I mean, next month we are going to launch before the bureaucrats and civil society organization. It was so good. I mean, हम लोग बता रहे हैं कि कॉमन्स तो उसमें निकल के आया कि कॉमन्स, I mean, the area is shrinking and land use pattern also changing. At the same time, NTFE, whatever is available, that is also depleting. But how you will show it in visually to everybody, for the community, other community members also. So visual has its own effect, and how technology can help us. So that is a big thing. Then the other thing we are now thinking, because of NTFE different livelihood project, we have leaflet making unit.
Then different kind of NTFE trading, we are thinking of adding more thing to it. At the same time, we are also working with artisans, tribal women artisans, especially in natural dye and the handloom process. So now we are thinking how you can use technology. We need all of your help, how we can go ahead. And my experience is that, I mean, especially youth within the community, women, they are very much interested to use the any kind of phone, they are open to any kind of technology, but that should be simple. And the other thing is language is also an issue. Because I mean, most of the things are very difficult to in Odia language. And the language also, I mean, it should be, people should understand the language. That is a big issue.
One more question just I wanted to ask. So I was thinking, so while moving with this community level CRP, I'm thinking whether it is possible or not, I'm not sure. It's not all that difficult to do also, but I'm not a tech guy. So suppose I'm giving one phone to one CRP. So there are 84 CRPs. So whether we can incorporate something in the tech that if any worker will operate that platform without any error or flaw, so that can show in that thing, so that we can give some reward to that community worker, maybe 50 rupees. Okay, so you have used this tab or you used all the pages error free, you have sent all the datas, monthly datas without any error. So whether anything that we can derive, so is it possible?
It's possible.
Okay.
So there are some measurements on meeting your targets and error. So there is and how do you know there's an error? So there is a admin app. So random review happens of the data. And there's huge volume of data, some 26 lakh farmer data comes. So some sampling based this thing. So see, wherever validation rules can be put, have been put. Wherever correlations can be put, have also been put. Say for example, if you are capturing how much of marketable surplus of paddy do you have, and you say you give some, and this number is captured in it's captured in quintals. So if somebody captures a ridiculously high number and their land holding is small, so we know that this is one of the two is wrong. So which basically means that, so we track surplus by acre and there are tolerance limits, right? So if you're crossing something, that means somebody has entered too many zeros in the data capture. So like that there is, but you cannot do a data validation rule there. You can have to do some logical validation. And you can't stop the entry, you'll later do a correction by talking to somebody. So that correction happens through the DPM level office, web app, admin app. So whoever gets that thing in time without corrections, rewards are given. And it's some 2 rupees per entry or some 7 rupees per entry, something like that, for error-free record or something. But coming back to, see, I've heard 3 main things till now. One, you spoke about technology. So what you spoke about is a technology issue, saying we know usability is not an issue, अच्छे से बनाया है, people are able to use it, लेकिन वो backend थोड़ा कमज़ोर है, the technology is a little weak, it needs to be fixed. Then we also spoke about some perhaps usability or user experience where or a combination of user experience and data volume. So the example you gave ki at 10 to 12 screens is okay. Could also be that after it becomes too complex to understand where am I. A screen ke andar screen, usme sub screen, hai na? Or it could be that the volume is too much, so it just gets overwhelming for people to enter, and then they just give up after it. Like it takes 1 hour to do one person's entry, so nahi hota hai. So both these issues came. Vidyut ji just briefly touched on motivation. कि how the data can help the community. So I want to hear a little bit about motivation. कि what has been your experience? Now, all the three issues till now are not user issues. They are the tech issues. And it is our job to make the proper tech. So till nowhere we are saying कि user बहुत अच्छी simple सी app थी लेकिन user से हुई नहीं. Nobody has said that. So I think it's worth the while to acknowledge that, and then we'll share the meeting notes with the people कि till now nobody is saying कि हमारा user बेवकूफ़ है. We're saying हमसे अच्छे से नहीं बन रही है. So this is an opportunity to dispel the myth कि आपने बोला कि digital literacy education has got nothing to do with it. सीधी सी ऐप बनाओ सब यूज करते हैं. There's a great statement to be able to make. Another statement we could perhaps make is see if we can. To Naveen and I were talking yesterday. He had some emergency, couldn't come. Can we create some sort of a movement is a strong word, but some kind of a communication to begin with to large donors about minimizing data capture needs? And if it can go collectively as from 1,000 NGOs, maybe, and with some proper analysis, this data is useful, this is not, and some with examples, and urge them ki bhaiya don't get greedy, kind of a thing, and the implications of that. So maybe something will happen, we don't know. Already DPDP ki wajah se there are some constraints on data capture about PII and all, so maybe this is a good time to add that. One thing I want to hear from people, their experience on motivation. क्योंकि बहुत cases देखे जाते हैं where it is one-way data entry. So if I am doing a data entry and I don't even know what happened to it. तो ठीक है आपने मुझे 300 रुपए दिए, it's fine, but that is not motivation for me to do a good job. So when I clean my room, तो बहुत सुंदर लगता है. At the end of it, table साफ हो गई है, सब कुछ हो गया, झाड़ू पोछा हो गया. Then that's instant reward. So what is the reward? What is the motivation? If anybody can give good or bad examples. क्योंकि ये data entry is a very drudgery work. है ना? तो फिर वो Okay.
Third trimester pregnancy has some complication or not, what is the some children of that data. All those data sent back to them, and they can see also there. And based on that, they prepare their own note. They take it to the exact beneficiary. They are doing there. And now, either they used to upload lot of things through the paper-based formats. Now it is being digitalized. So you are asking about the motivational things. Even though she receives all the information, so what is the motivation that she goes and serve to the people? Maybe we see that when she goes with all the information, the community level service providers, they are working with the government, like ANM, ASA, so they are kind of giving some respect to these people. Okay, they are having data, the vast data of the whole village. So they are some kind of at the different level. So that is the motivation they get. That is one. Second, the time saving. So that they really kind of giving some kind of motivation to them. So they could able to save some time. Earlier it was going in a different way, and it was some kind of monotonous thing that was happening. Right now it's okay. So these are the two things that motivates them.
Regarding incentivizing through money, those who are working with good intention and serving more people, that's what is lacking. Number 3. Number 4 is kind of acceptability by the community. So suppose I'm using one phone with some MS and all. some other people they are coming to them and they, भाई देख लो ये भी क्या है, ये थोड़ा हो गया, तुम तो ये use कर रहे थे. So they feel recognized within the community. That's also one of the motivation. These three I could memorize while talking with the people.
I will just one thing. You know, we have two kind of experience. In a particular work program, we gave the tab to all the community mobilizers. In the another program, we told them, you please use your own mobile, without even not giving any money to, because we fought a lot with the partner agency. They thought, no, let them use their own Android phone. So space is also an issue. The first case, it was very smooth. Because using his or her personal mobile in this work is also demotivating kind of a thing, without giving even 250 rupees to that person to recharge the mobile. Whereas in previous thing, there was money was given for the recharge and other thing, because that involves a cost. The person getting 5,000, 6,000, charging mobile is also a cost, and space is an issue. They are using so many other apps also. So it is a operational kind of a thing also. And rightly you pointed out, and I always told this is a data diarrhea. Most of these people, they have that kind of a thing. So many information you are unable to manage with the dashboard also.
Yeah, thank you. I am Satya from Seva Jagat, Odisha. Actually, we have used some software for different causes, but as per the design, but most of the design drawn by the agency. Some of the study actually, as research is concerned with the UNDP, actually we have done, they have come to the field and they have interact with the community, and accordingly they have designed the things. So that was also very easy. But one is a Samadhan platform we had done. One of the Bombay-based agency had done the software, and it was done with the government people. There was a software system in the government, and any just layman, and that means from the community level, they can send a message in Odia or anything, and that will come to that will come with the mobile, and then that will be uploaded in the site, and it will go to each of the department. There was 72 departments, and the 72 department was monitoring the things, and they were taking they are resolving their problems. The tribal people should not come to the collector's house because they have to spend huge amount, 1,000, 2,000 rupees, and taking dalal also, they're exploited. So it was easy, and it was a lot of thousands. Actually, more than 5,500 cases was resolved within 2-3 years, actually. It was good, actually. But as the water monitoring also, our team is also doing the water monitoring. They're uploading photographs of the water table and all things. This AEG also our staffs are doing, actually. There is no problem. GPS mapping also we are doing. But as the community is concerned, we have used mostly the youth, tribal youth, girls and all things. They are using WhatsApp. That is very easy to get the message and to resolve their problems. So that is also one of the area. But our concern is that how we can train our team, maybe second line leader or third line leader. Now we are using just Gunjan software. I think you might have known about Gunjan software for the staff level program monitoring and all things, tracking all the records and documents, all the things. But how our second line leaders can design themselves with the software easily, they can design according to their project and programs also. And easily we can track it from different level, second line, third line, fourth line also, how they can track their programs, because it will be very easy for our thing. And the records should be also kept in safely. We can keep it for years together. maybe that maybe we can, that may be some cost and we can pay for that actually. There is no much problem, but we need that actually. For that reason, if you can help us, that will be a great thing actually.
What is happening? So if you can think of one line, maybe it's a request to you. We all are implementing many social development apps. So when this app is in use, so anybody from your side or somebody can see at least, if any partner can request you to have a look on that. Actually, one of my friend.
And thank you for bringing it. So I was going to ask, how many of us are open to saying, here is my app, submit an app with your own thoughts on this is my pain or not, and then some of us, we can form one tech group to do a quick analysis of what we think is going wrong, what's good, what's not, so then you can decide what to do with it. What also we can do, and if we can do it on one common website. So I am, for example, happy to post all my app listings there and write down my own analysis of what I think is good and what I think is bad about them. I think it also makes a great reading for everyone who are designing future apps as to what pitfalls to avoid, what are good patterns, what are bad patterns. So this was one thought that was going on. So thanks for bringing it out. I'd love to do that. I'll send that out as a meeting action. Yes. Different people, different agencies. Everybody has their own agency. No, it need not be local. Could be remote, could be this. Every organization has their own process. So they'll do their evaluation, find the right vendor, do it. Sometimes donors will say, here, this is my agency. They will give, a donor may give an app. Sometimes they will do that. And especially, yeah. So the other question which I had related to that was, and I'll just come back to you in this one. Okay. Okay. So it'll be useful to see also if the applications you have and you're using inside the organization, depending on the ownership of those applications, do you believe there's an opportunity for the other organizations to use it? Now, you may choose to charge a fee for it. You may choose not to charge a fee. That's your decision. If you have the rights to give it to the other party. Because if I'm saying there are some 400 odd participants in here, maybe about 300 odd organizations, I can bet everybody is doing duplicate work when it comes to technology. So just even to know what these 300 members of Common Ground are doing creates a massive reuse and rationalization opportunity. I mean, I could even say that, let's say there are 3 tech vendors sitting here in this room. If all 300 organizations were to pool their tech budgets and say, hey, build us something reusable, you'll be better off, more robust, more usable, and you would have created a DPG with less budget. So I think,
What my experience in social sector has been, everyone thinks that their problem is very specific. No solution can solve their problem, even if it's a standard solution which can be customized open source. But हमारी problem सबसे अलग है और सबसे specific है. And
no,
nothing can solve it. So even if there are reusable solutions, it's our mindset also which sometimes become an
part
impediment.
true, part not true. So a lot of people for a lot of use cases will actually not say this. They say, okay, this works, I'll use it. And especially if the solution is good and cheap. If something is good and cheap, I will use it even if it meets 80% of my needs. I will say, okay. Because if I do it myself, it will take me 2 years to reach there. I will end up spending 35 lakh rupees to do even the first version. By the time it's stable, I would have spent 1 crore in the overall thing. This is available for me, I will use it. There are places where you really have a very unique proposition. Okay, that's fine. But they will be 10-20% of your overall needs. The rest of the space, as you said, कि हमारी mind space में है, then it is our responsibility to change our mind space. Only we can change. अगर पता है कि मैं गलत सोच रहा हूँ, so then it's my responsibility to correct my thinking. So I do believe I would like to create a dialogue space to say कि all of you are using tech and there are other people who are not in the Zoom. Everybody using tech in some shape or the other. What are you using it for? You share your application and then we can build a volunteer team. They'll talk to you, they'll do an analyze, we can review their analysis, write expert comments and find if there's a reuse opportunity amongst related organizations. Even if you are spending, 5 lakh rupees annually on tech, that is 15 crore for 300 organizations. And which you can make massive reusable assets with that amount of money. And much more robust. है ना? So जैसे आपने बोला कि वो sync solve नहीं हो रहा है. I was tempted to say when you said that we have the best of brains. No, they are not the best of brains because sync is a very simple issue. है ना? So maybe they need some training. Maybe somebody else who's done it can do it. And then they can reuse that, components. So I think there's an opportunity to pool both sides, the demand and supply side. And so one action we'll do is we will invite people to submit your applications for review. So, and the second thing, once that review happens, then we'll ask you, are you open to let others use your app? And जो review हम करेंगे हमें भी पता चल जाएगा common functionalities हैं कि नहीं है, and whether there's an opportunity for creating a base technology which can be reusable for many.
There was this project that was done by IDEO and a bunch of folks. They brought people together for something called last mile money, which was looking at sort of fintech at the last mile. And they created a whole toolkit around design patterns and what works, what doesn't work, things like that. So maybe in addition to the analysis that is done from the apps, I think we have enough sort of access to volunteers and maybe already a lot of research done on good patterns. So we can kind of probably build some sort of a resource like that. And I know that everybody also has probably reusable resources already with design systems, things like that we can make available probably.
Actually, can I just, 1 second? I love the idea. And I think we may get few volunteers, 1, 2, but I think we should find people from within your organizations. So we'll make a pool of people, resource people from each organization so that as these exercises happen, their own maturity increases. So instead of saying कि volunteers will come and go away, then the sector loses the knowledge. So आप ही एक आदमी nominate करिए. So we'll then to guide that team, we will have 3-4 people work with them through the year.
And just want to add, oh sorry, Rishabh, I keep in. The thing that you were saying about making a case to donors about data, how much data to kind of capture, I think there's probably together a case to be also made to donors around how they ask organizations to adopt either sort of data collection tech is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of pushing happening to thoda AI burkha do isme kind of situation, right? Like, so I think as a group, if we are also able to put a good foot forward for that, I think it might help. And I think Digital Futures Lab had done an interesting discussion around this. Maybe we can also partner with people like that who know how to potentially put that point forward. So just want to offer those 2 thoughts on that.
Are you in touch with anybody from Digital Futures?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Rishabh also, but yeah, I can also.
I think two things which I'd like to add. One is that I feel there's not enough. I mean, and this is not just at the donor level. From my experience, I've also observed this at the non-profit CSO level. There's not enough forethought often put into what kind of insight making would the data be used for. And when that is the case, the folks collecting the data are there's a certain lack of agency they're treated with, where ये सब collect कर लो, ये सब 50 data point collect कर लो, and often I've not seen that push only coming from donors, because that clarity on what data do we need for what kind of intelligence, and is that intelligence going to come by analyzing it locally, is that intelligence going to come by analyzing it through AI, through basic analysis, whatever. I mean, whatever that way of analysis is, as human or as automated, doesn't matter. So that forethought being put into it before we even get to the data collection piece is something which is super important. And I feel there's this big database. The more data we'll have, the better we would be, and the more intelligent we would be. That's probably a very decent thought process if you're a Google or a Meta, because you have the kind of ability to analyze everything under the sun. But I do feel that even there's a lot of forethought gone into what kind of data do we need to collect. That's missing in most often. And most often what I've seen, having worked in many projects, is that a lot of a data system has been made. There are 50 lakh rows lying somewhere of the data that's been collected. And then we come to then we start asking the tough questions that, अब इसका करें क्या? इसमें तो ये 5 चीजें हैं ही नहीं जो काम करनी चाहिए. So I think that being a very essential part of the design process at every level, whether it's a donor, whether it's a non-profit, is something that's needed. The second piece, also something, this is on similar lines to what Akshay pointed out, is that so recently a very close friend was going through a sort of a vision impairment issue, and he also happens to be a very senior computer scientist. So while just helping him out through it, the amount of design principles on how to build visually impaired accessible technology that are available across the ecosystem is phenomenal. But they've also then been able to break down different forms of visual impairment. Like, what does accessible tech for a colorblind look like, and how is it different for a person who has 10% vision, and how is that different from a person who has 80% vision, or who has 80% loss versus 10% loss. That's the kind of nuance where what design principles of technology working in a Quora put with a certain kind of network accessibility, with a certain kind of weather, with a certain kind of whatever sort of that context determines, and how do you make data collection or technology work in that context, and having enough discourse and content around it is something which is super important, and that's a very big missing sort of gap which I see.
To Vidyut's point, I think there's an opportunity also to create some sort of a course plan, hand-holding something on educating middle managers in your organizations on how to think about tech and data needs and how to design them. As you said, work backwards from the insights and outcomes as opposed to forward with ki data chahiye. So there's no, so I think one very important theme that's also emerging, which I should have made explicit. So whatever actions we'll take should largely be around reusing and repurposing. We don't have to reinvent. There are enough people doing enough things. Unless something is completely not applicable or completely unaffordable, we shouldn't be thinking of doing anything. So repurpose, reuse.
So just to, one thing that comes up in that context is discoverability. So even if you're willing to, like typically when we personally use some apps, we don't go with saying, okay, let me build something because I need to chat with my friend. You go to Play Store, try out some things, or use what is the most common one, and you live with whatever features there are. So similarly, if you want to try that kind of a mindset here, which would be probably more efficient and thing, but finding that it, even if you put it on your website, unless you really know the specific name or what you're looking for already, it's very difficult to find things. So if there is a way to have a central place, so one is you're doing a review, but even if at some point that's possible or not possible, even if it's a directory,
Yeah.
that would be of a great help.
Yeah. So
And
we
then
had
you can
attempted to do something like that. We built a property called digitalcommons.io, and it's a multi-vendor this thing. So right now we just populated it with content from our portfolio. Dhwani and Tech for Good and few others are going to be adding theirs very soon. So we could add the capability to do application reviews also on that. Not in terms of this is good, this is bad, but structured analysis, application analysis, what we discussed, what's working, what's not. You can talk to Goalkeep and others to see, to bring the patterns into it. We can also, one of the approaches we have found there is, while it's an application listing, it's primarily a listing of use cases. Because what people relate to most is the use case. Now, so my artisan will make their product portfolio and publish their product listing or something. That's a use case. So people understand that. So I'll share the link as when we do that. Actually, not just that, once we do a little consolidation of what all assets are out there, we'll share. The idea being that I believe there are enough applications. Many of them you may be owning the IP. Many of them donor may have the ability to say, okay, donor owns the IP, something. We can also add a place for you to express your needs, right? So you can see if something is there. Good, you reach out, try to reuse. If it's not there, you write that, hey, I'm looking for something like this. So it could be a discovery for both parties. For you to discover what's available and for the tech providers to discover what you're asking for. So, any last thoughts, anyone? I think the next session, participants are coming in. We'll start. Thank you. I'll circulate notes. And how do we know who to? We'll circulate to everyone. Huh? Okay. Huh? Or we can, whatever the proceedings are, we can send it to all the participants, whoever then.
Start by 10. So maybe just let's take 2-3 minutes and then we'll kick off. There was a pre-session to the 10 o'clock session as well, which I also joined late, but maybe Prashant can sum it up for us in a while, not right now. But broadly, what we were discussing there were what largely are, I mean, yes, technology can do a lot. Better data analysis of all the data that you're collecting can do a lot, but what fundamentally are the challenges in driving that adoption at different levels, at the levels of leadership of the organizations, but also at the levels of the CRPs of the community members who are actually collecting data, who are actually a part of that sort of life cycle in some ways. But today, right now, this session is, I think, the way I'd like to go about it is both a continuation to the previous session where we discussed technology challenges, but also a continuation to the yesterday's session which we had in this room. I know some of you were there. There are some familiar faces who were there yesterday and day before. Some of them are completely new ones. So yesterday, just to give some context, we discussed a couple of use cases on how specific technology use cases where technology can play the role of a key tool to help commons-related issues. So a couple of interesting things came out. something came out around how we can have community-based monitoring systems to track the biodiversity of the forests. Another interesting thing that came out was around how do we build tools for community-based groundwater or even above surface water, like groundwater and below groundwater budgeting tools. There was something that came around, what are the design principles on designing technology for these, but just continuing these two discussions, I'd like this more to be a discussion amongst all of us than a set of people just having a panel discussion around a couple of questions, around a couple of big questions which we were left with yesterday and over the previous, and probably we don't have, and there's important to deliberate those answers. So I'll just give some context about what those questions are, and then maybe would love to hear your thoughts and have a sort of discussion amongst all of us. So one of the things that came out is that we're all talking about lots of data collection, right? I mean, and data collection at multiple levels. Data collection at the level of where all of us sitting in this room are responsible for giving some 500 data points to the donors who give us money. Data collection at the level of all our programs which are being run. Collection of very specific data points on those programs. But while data collection and MIS systems is a sense of giving us a lot of control and giving us intelligence and visibility on large macro systems which otherwise isn't present. But at the same time, let's pause for a moment and think that when as individuals, let's forget and take off our non-profit, CSO, donor hats. As individuals, when we have experienced MIS systems, some of the specific examples which I can think of is whatever, July 30th or August 30th, the ITR filing dates, right? All of us probably went through it. And I don't know for most of you, for me, it's a disempowering process. It's like, how do I navigate all this mess and do something which is supposed to be so bloody simple? And so that's one data system which I can think of, which all of us, I'm sure in this room, went through very, very recently in the last month and a half or two. Similarly, banking apps. Use an SBI app to figure your stuff out when you have a 2-minute deadline. All the best. It's probably not going to work. Similarly, recently my parents' house had some property tax issues and I had to navigate that on the Haryana website. Took me 4 hours to sort something as simple as that. And this is something every resident out there staying in my hometown probably has to do. And I'm a I work independently with a lot of technology organizations. Probably I'm more tech adept than an average person doing that. So if these data systems for us, if these technology platforms for us, where we've been talking about data collection, have done such an abysmal job, what kind of tech are we talking? I mean, how do data systems work for the communities we sort of stay with? What are the sort of challenges we face there? How better can we take care of it? And I think this is a very, very large open-ended question. I don't think we're going to come to very specific answers during this discussion. But it's a good place to sort of start from. That's one broad question which I wanted to sort of discuss and talk more about. The other thing, and then maybe I'll just pass over the mic to all of you, is the aspect of heterogeneity versus homogeneity of community data specifically. I hear a lot of narrative around the fact that how do we start generating more and more and more of community data? But what does community data really mean? What even does a community mean to begin with? It's sitting here, it's easy to talk about Gram Sabhas and think of them as homogeneous bodies. But the moment you zoom in on that maps going from the big round Google Earth image to that one specific tree you go to, the amount of complexity we're dealing with is again massive. So there's obviously bias in that community data. There's obviously a lot of heterogeneity in that community data. How do we navigate that as organizations? These are the two broad sort of questions which are there. Would love to just hear your thoughts and see what you guys think about it, what kind of perspectives and lenses we can process this from. I'm just looking at you, Akshay, because I know you think about this stuff all the time. I'd love to hear.
Hello. Yeah, you're very right when you say that at different levels, how what we think when we collect data on field, like the data gets co-opted. Like from the community, also there's so much diversity, there's so much bias. We do make this mistake of viewing Gram Sabha as a homogeneous group of people, but that's not true, because even within a particular Gram Sabha, there are communities who are even more marginalized, and often their perspectives of women, the elderly, like a lot of times just get unnoticed, and also like other people speak for them. So I'm like, with my limited experience, I've not been able to figure out how technology can be used to, like for instance, there is a community representative who's assisting a particular researcher in filling the data gaps, and they just rely on one person to like speak for the community or speak for the entire family. And how can tech like answer for this? Because okay, there's a survey designed to collect information from different set of people, but there's only one person who's speaking on behalf of the different sets of people. So how do we like navigate this? I mean, do we have enough time to invest to like sit down and just spend time to be able to like navigate this problem? When
I think we have experienced this, and where the problem lies is also in our understanding, where we think tech is the solution for everything. Tech works well if the processes on grounds are strong. So, for example, in our program, the program design is pretty strong, but even how it is operationalized in each state varies, because the communities which we work with, community organizations which we work with in each of these states will be different. Plus, let's say if you are saying, for example, in graduation approach, when we talk about, so the CRP does a particular survey to select the, okay, so the graduation program is basically, under this program, we are working with the NRLM, and the idea is to work with the ultra poor. So NRLM has currently, it's been saying that 10 crore women are part of the SHGs, and they have saturated the rural space and reached out to the last mile. But in our research and in our own programs, the Nudge found that there is still evidence that there are many people who are marginalized and not included in the SHGs and not got the entitlements. So these are what we are calling the most excluded or the ultra poor. And the ultra poor is not a very good term to use, or doesn't sound well. So now it's poorest of poor or most excluded, which we are using. So basically, I'll just walk you through the simple process of how the graduation approach is designed. Is first part comes is selection, that you select only those beneficiaries who should actually be a part of the program. Under selection, you identify them using the usual wealth ranking process, social mapping and wealth ranking, and then we run a tool called poverty assessment tool. And so all of these activities happen through the app, but there are offline processes to it. that when this CRP group is going to a village, they have to take the VO into confidence or whatever community organization is active there. Once that is done, then they'll go through the next steps, and social mapping and all the other PRA exercises, they have to involve the community. Once you get a list of, okay, what the community thinks are the poor households in that area, then they run the PAT tool on them, and then then the list of people who are actually selected as poor by the after the PAT are then endorsed by the community organization again. And this community organization now can be one person or can be VO. So this is where the process part comes in. That who are we talking about when it's the village organization? In some areas, it's the village headman who tries to interfere in the process. Or in some areas, VOs are not that strong. In some areas, VOs are quite strong to take that decision. Sometimes there are political interference. So how strong is your process to ensure that objectively that process is taken care of? This is not tech. For the questions which come to me are not tech at all. These are operational questions. So how strong is our process? How strongly are we able to translate our process so that tech can be enabled and understand where it is that tech can help and where it is that our own operations process need to be strengthened and more helpful. And then once they are selected, then we involve the SRLM functionary to then select and finalize the list. So in this process, at least, we are able to take care of both the tech part and also involve the community in taking care that the decisions made and the people selected are well. There are other steps to it, but this is the main crux of selection. So that is where my experience is.
Yeah. I mean, tech is not solution for all, I think. And also we should be very careful. You know, sometimes this tech also deprived poorest of the poor. In Right to Food campaign, in all over India, we are opposing this introduction of this tech into the PDS, ICDS. You know, eKYC is needed, Aadhaar seeded is needed. You need a POS machine to put your thumb. I mean, those people who are working in the field, you will not get the thumb impression correctly. So many people are deprived of PDS because of that so-called tech introduced in the PDS system. And in ICDS system, a small child, they need an Aadhaar card for 2-3 months child also, unless that children will not enrolled in the ICDS. So also in the midday meal also, in the school also. So because of that, because of POS machine, many people are denied. The poorest of the poor cannot go to the PDS center to get the ration. So I mean, we should be very careful for that also. It is not a solution for all. It can deprive poorest of the poor. And this is the bright example.
We have taken the premise that Aadhaar may not be available. So the unique ID which is formed at the initial stage of selection is a combination of the participant name and their household number, etc. And later on, yes, Aadhaar, because then convergence and everything. Yeah. Yeah.
How do we make sure that,
yeah.
that whatever the acknowledgement in different settings look like is important. But someone, I think Guru wanted to say something and then maybe.
Yeah. So I think first thing is to recognize that we are doing some very complicated and complex stuff. So that's a prelude to my remarks. So when we underestimate the challenge, then we are very quick with responses which may not meet the requirement. So I think even in the way we look at what we are trying to do, the way our worldview is, we have to have some discussion on that. So for example, we use MIS, and I was a techie for 15 years, and then last 20 years I'm in social sector. So I feel, everybody will feel like that. I also feel I've navigated that jump. And I think, first of all, MIS as a concept, right? What is MIS? It's for the management. So long back, we had a discussion with MKSs and we said, we should start talking about Janta information systems. So it's not just a word, it's the worldview behind the word. So Janta information system, community information system. So then we start thinking about it differently. And there are 5 or 6 parameters. So I think first we need to have a set of principles that will guide our work. Because if we don't have principles and we go into program, then much down the path we find that the program is not doing what actually some people want. So first thing I think is what the discussion just now, we had the previous 2 interactions. Are we doing technology to the people or are we doing technology with the people? And I think it's not just a cliche. These are not phrases that we have to use lightly. So I heard a lot of technology being done to the people, that you have already decided some ideas and then you take it to the community. Do we do the technology and take it to the community, or do we do the technology with the community from the start? Because if you do technology with the community from the start, the idea that biometrics will work would not have gone into our PDS system, which resulted in people in Jharkhand dying because they can't get food grains. So I think a perspective, as a techie, I can easily understand that we have the hammer, and we have such a beautiful, powerful hammer that we can only see nails around us. And I think that is a problem that techies have to solve. Techies typically are more privileged in this conversation. We must accept that. All the techies in this room come from a particular social, economic background, and we are seeking to work with communities which have been historically deprived. So our sensitivity needs to be higher. So 3 or 4 quick principles before I hand. So first is, I think, when we say people information system, then the focus is not so much efficiency, which is what we hear. Efficiency is not the primary focus. Primary focus is participation, it is accountability and transparency. Then the way you design the system completely changes. Because efficiency, you are talking about, I took 4 hours to do a Haryana system. Now, I'm not therefore saying the Haryana system is good, but your parameter is very clear. I need to do this in the minimum time that I need to. And sometimes efficiency and participation are contradictory. Can we recognize that? If you recognize that, then it may, for a person who is struggling to get land records, 4 hours may be nothing on a technology system because that person is spending 20 days otherwise. And even 4 hours may make sense. I'm not saying you should build inefficient systems, but what is the thing you're prioritizing you need to really rethink about. So the focus is transparency, accountability, participation, not decision support. Nature of information should not be financial essentially, which is what in the MI system we are very used to looking at quantitative stuff. So financial data becomes very important. But for community systems, we need to look at physical information, qualitative also. 20 years back, MIS was essentially quantitative. Now, because technology is advanced, qualitative stuff is all the time being analyzed, which is very important for communities. Language, again. Usually, MIS systems are built in the language of the powerful, of the literate. And therefore, language, multilinguality has to be an ab initio way we think about systems. All these parameters will make the work more difficult, more time-consuming, more inefficient, but that's what will work. Efficient systems are unlikely to work for the people for whom they are built. This user interface also, we talk about user-friendly in a very loose, superficial manner, but we need to explore that very significantly for text literacy, for example. So it's not jazziness of the interface, rather than these other things that we look at different constituencies and what will be easy for them to do. Geographic views, of course, now that's become this is some note I wrote some 10 years back, and I said geographic is important, but we now know that it's a very given thing. So these are, I think, some of the language we use, the ideas we have, the worldviews you have. The tech people have to go a long way out before they start making sense to the community people. So I think the ball is in our court, and I'm speaking as an ex-techie or a techie.
No, I completely agree. I think if just all of you can give a one-line introduction about yourself before you say yes.
Guru from IT for Change. We have been having this struggle for a long time. Our byline is bridging technological possibilities and social realities. So we have been in that complex interface for the last 25 years.
I'm Vinay, and I work with National Coalition for Natural Farming. We are working with a network of CSOs and other stakeholders and trying to find out what are the challenges in agroecology-based practices, agroecology-based solutions, and how to take it forward with different stakeholders and start conversation and collaborative actions. So 2 points I was thinking. The first is yes, process is important. How we are working, people, structure, training of people who are taking data. So all those things are important. But at the same time, what from our experiences, what we have learned is that the way you are designing the question, the language, you talked about language, but how are you writing it? How are you forming it? Not like in a conversational manner. If you form it, it's easy for community resource person to ask it and ask what whoever is responding to that data sets, they answer it better and they understand it better. So that becomes important. Other than that, the second part that you were, just give me a homogeneity, you talked about how heterogeneous and homogeneous these data sets we are thinking of. So when we are working on commons, there are certain data pointers which are common, like data pointers I'm talking about. So answer to that might be different at different region, but those indicators or those data pointers are common. And there's a possibility for us to work around that and build a common such data pointers, indicators for different things. For forest related issues, we are working with core stack team here. They already have done certain things regarding that. So forest related issues or livestock census detail of particular area. So all these data then help you plan for the common, like how are you planning for the transformation of commons, what work you have to do. So yeah, these two things.
So I'm Deepak and I'm from Gramvani. So basically we are engaging communities with digital tools. So my experience so far, I'll try to summarize it. So MIS applications which we are discussing, particularly intended to the intermediaries or to the CSO staff. So the app tend to be complicated and certain level of technology dissemination and capacity building exercise needs to be conducted in order to get it rolled out in the field and collect some data to use it for decision making. On the other part, where certain applications are community facing or community centric, in those communities, what we have realized that mobile phone itself is not being positioned as a knowledge device, but as an entertainment device. So most of the community we interact with, they tend to learn, Facebook and YouTube tops the chart, followed by WhatsApp. So these are certain applications which they have learned out of themselves with certain interest. And now most of the people who have access to digital phones and who are somehow digital literate are able to navigate through it. But certain applications which aim to increase the knowledge base. So let's say when you say filing tax application or registering a grievance with the government department, that needs certain sort of orientation or certain digging in the application to find out or where do you actually want to go. So that is something we have not been able to position, particularly with companies who are not very digital savvy. So we are facing challenges with that, and figuring out how to simplify those apps to make them use it would be another challenge. But somehow I'm not sure if there are enough efforts to position the device itself as a knowledge device.
I think one question that I'm sitting with also is that I think the way we structure some of the data collection is how the machines need to structure and read it, right? As opposed to how people might, like building on my friend's kind of point, right? Like how are we asking these questions and having, conversations, because there's a lot of that. The data we need is locked in that. But if we ask it as discrete questions in a certain order, we are asking it based on some assumption of the thing. And this is less on, Yeah, it's our need for, it's not even our need for structure. We can process it. It is the machine's need for structure, and for us to be doing it at a certain scale, right? That forces these formats. And I think this is coming more from maybe my life as a design researcher than as a techie. I don't know if I, anyways. And like in that, the whole thing was that you didn't go out with a questionnaire. Even if you were doing qualitative data collection, it's not a questionnaire, it's a discussion guide, right? Which I think maybe I'm using language that is from that, but everybody's familiar with that, that you're going with some touch points on what you want to learn by having a conversation, and people will tell their story in the order that makes sense to them, right? And then, but in that process, you know all the things that you want to learn, and you cover those things as it comes up, and then you have some unstructured data, and then how do you bring structure? So like, where is that onus of structure? Is it on the person asking the questions? Is it the person responding, or does it come afterwards? And I wonder if we need to also think a little bit beyond. I think ODK was great, but I think it has put us in some sort of a jail with forms and things like that. So I think maybe we have to start thinking about newer tools and what they allow us to do. Maybe start from a clean slate also a little bit, so that it is more with the community and with the rhythms in how people share their knowledge. And it comes back a little bit to what you were saying about community knowledge, all of that, right? That comes in stories, that comes in poems, that comes in songs, right? But that is data, that is knowledge, that is process. And we're not necessarily looking at some of that also. I know that it's not, some of the types of data collection, this doesn't make sense, but some of the things that we're saying, knowledge for commons and community stewardship, things like that, that's knowledge passed down in those formats, which doesn't sit in neat CSV rows, I think.
No, I think this is something, I mean, it's also something very close to my heart. I've been involved in a project which seems to be getting nowhere, sadly, around this, is that as CSOs and both researchers, there is a treasure trove of qualitative data that is lying there with us. Every survey which any of you have ever done ends with क्या और कुछ बताना चाहेंगे इन सब के अलावा, and most often it's that और कुछ which, or others please specify as, yeah, it's that which has the story and not all your 35 fields which were very meticulously designed after spending 15 days of brainstorming sessions. But how do you make sense of that or kuch? I mean, this is something I was engaging with a couple of organizations which have a lot of video data created by the communities telling their stories of हमें ये problem है, हमारा hand pump नहीं चल रहा है, हमारा गांव में पानी नहीं आ रहा है, बिजली नहीं आ रहा है, and the whole narrative around it and all that jazz we love to talk about, that how something like this is eventually a climate outcome and there's that fourth order effect was very clear. But how does any of this get communicated? How does any of that get made sense from without, let's say, a researcher going and doing it for 50 rows? Is something which I don't know of. I do feel, yeah, I'll just pass the mic. What? Yeah, I would love to hear. That's what I'm saying. There are multiple people from Gram Vani who, yeah.
No, but I mean, I would just like to add here, to some of these things. See, fundamentally, we need to acknowledge that we are looking at reductive approaches as we deal with the data, and that's where the real problem is. Binary has its limitation, and we have to accept it. How do we break those boundaries beyond simply, whatever we are discussing is essentially the information or data ingestion. That's all we are talking about so far, right? We have not been able to factor in the change in the general mood of you talked about Gram Vani's stories, and I mean, I'm sorry to differ here on this piece. Who are we to decide Facebook or YouTube is entertainment or knowledge? Just because we are techno-privileged. That's the whole problem. See, those are essentially the aggregation platforms, and then it is the sensibilities of the community. So we need to really look at things from very different perspectives. But since we are in a commons convening, so the commons is a thing. See, in the commons space, the knowledge processing or the synthesis, it takes generations. And that is something which we need to really understand, designing tech for this space. We cannot be looking at the stacks of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then aim at arriving at solutions or frameworks for that. And we really need to look at decadal, pieces to really, cut through it. The society filters out. When we sit there, at a water common and we discuss, and somebody asks कि मेरे को फला गांव जाना है कहाँ है, तो there is never going to be an accurate information कि आप 500 मीटर जाके लेफ्ट होके और राइट होके जाइए, बस थोड़ा सा आगे से लारे हो जाएगा. The point is, there is a different context. So that is one point which I wanted to, sort of underline कि in the commons space, how are we looking at technology beyond the simple data ingestion. The second point I wanted to put forth is, there is a whole wide world in the tech beyond the software part of it. I give you one quick example. I work in deserts, and we towards setting up the camel milk value chain, we looked at the technologies available, and to our surprise, we could not find a milk quality assessment machine which was calibrated to assess camel milk, right? And we are the largest milk producer here. So how do you look at technology? If somebody has to work towards rejuvenating a water common, हमें मिट्टी निकालना है पानी तालाब से, सिंपल, और हम पूरे देश में तालाबों में हम मिट्टी निकालते हैं. Why do we have to resort to the mega machines? Why have we not asked this simple question, ki where are the decentralized renewable technology, where are the smaller technologies which do not create a different kind of power structure? Who are the most able and privileged people today in villages? Those who have JCBs and those who have, हम जिसको क्या 22 चक्का 16 चक्का, these are new power centers. Where are these power centers coming from? From technologies. So when you say कि knowledge है या ये है, तो मेरे को थोड़ा सा उसमें समस्या लगती है कि हम लोग कैसे इसको. तो we also need to start the conversations around physical tech. And how do we look at those in the conversations of commons? तो उस पे भी थोड़ा सा अगर समय मिलता है, like this could be a good starting point जिस पे हम, but आगे हम लोगों को कहीं ना कहीं बात करना चाहिए.
Yeah, no, I think I know we might get a little distracted, but the point you're making, Anshul, about the physical technology is, I haven't seen it out play in the sense of commons, and you gave quite a few good examples, but this is exactly precisely how it's playing out in the natural farming space. Like if we're talking about natural farming, agroecology, however you'd like to sort of define it as, a different paradigm of farming requires a different paradigm of technology to support it. And those set of implements on where you can't have a combine to just go and harvest through your rice field. You have to build something new. What does technology, but also eases out drudgery, which is a fair expectation of tech to have, but at the same time also supports a biodiverse farm, is very different than a technology which lets you just harvest a farm in a certain very mechanistic way. So yes, how does that play out in the case of commons is a very... It's a social and a political problem as well. Yeah.
physical technology maybe sometimes helpful. But in most of the cases we have seen for the protection of the naturals and the traditional, the regeneration of the forest, and even if we organic agriculture, sometimes also it is affected by the technology. So we have to take care of this actually. Sometimes in the name of the technology that should not be affected. But in some cases, as the community is concerned, whenever we are using the JCB machine for digging the things, so how the we can use the laborer, but we can use the technology to minimize their hardship. So that can be help in protection of the even if in nature also. But we have seen the forest department is doing a lot of the things and using the technology in the forest for preservation and all things. But we know there is a lot of the herbs and shrubs has been destroyed out of this actually. So that is one of the area. But as the soft technology is concerned, sometimes we are looking for recording and documenting the traditional knowledge of the community. I think in some cases the technology has some limitations to consolidate it and to project it in before other thing. But as data is concerned, it's okay. But whenever the traditional knowledge is concerned, whenever we are recording from the tribal people, from the tribal knowledge, the biodiversity, and all the things. But as the data is concerned, okay, it is we can document it that how many grasses is in the community level, how many herbs are in the community level, how the shrubs in the community level. But how community is protecting it, how it is preserving it, traditionally how they are managing it, how the knowledge will percolate to the next generation. That there will be maybe some limitation. I don't know if you have some technology that can be consolidated and that can be percolate to other on a next generation, then that will also help us for the protection of the commons actually.
Just a point to, I guess, the Common Ground team, FES, etc., who were doing these sorts of convenings. I think technology has become a catch-all for digital software sort of technology. I think there's a need for us in these sorts of gatherings in our larger work and discussion to also have tracks, working groups, verticals, whatever, around this sort of appropriate technology, etc. Because like Rishabh said, I think that conversation is happening in, say, natural farming, etc. But when we're looking at different kinds of commons, right, I think then we might see problem statements like what Anshul said about value chain and things like that, that are worth us kind of as a group deliberating on, and maybe it's a curation piece, maybe it's existing. Some students or professors somewhere have created some implement, things like that, but bringing it to the forefront, creating pilot projects, that kind of thing. So I think technology has become now digital technology, right, as opposed to some of these other things, and finding what are the appropriate solutions and what are the problems, surfacing even those, and then for us to take a considered call. But I think that requires us to deliberate, and maybe this is not the session for that, but I think that has to become something that is an important outcome of this convening also.
Just to quickly add, see, ultimately, I'm just trying to underline that we need to identify the newer problem statements. That's and the scope. See, there are technologies, we have the mapping technologies, but has somebody done anything around using those, imaging technologies to map biodiversities in commons? We can easily do it. It's a fairly simple thing. We need to just enable some, people who might be able to do it far better because they have a very beautiful visual reference of creating memories, right? We ask them कि आप ऐसा वो पर्चा भरिए, वो पर्चे में लिखिए कि आपके कॉमन में, आपके ओरण में, आपके जंगल में कितने तरह का वनस्पति हैं, right? We have not crossed that vertical, we अपन वही बात कर रहे हैं कि बॉस उसको लेके फिर what we were discussing कि CSV पे डालना है. But could there be visual libraries? So new problem statements.
Yeah, I just wanted. Yeah, so Michael, I work with a lot of communities in the Northeast on problems pertaining to forests. I just wanted to.
Of contention that something like PBRs, and I know I'm touching a sort of a debated subject. How many PBRs are being made on paper and right now? And then how do they fundamentally get used? There's a lot of talk about how knowledge systems, how PBRs, how many things around commons will be digitized using technology. But I think for me, wherever I've seen technology work, commons or not, is places where there's a fundamental need for that use case irrespective of technology. So technology is either making it, in some cases, slightly more participatory, in many cases, much more efficient, in many cases, faster. But the need fundamentally exists irrespective of technology. It's not come and created magic. So then the question is also how much of it is actually a technology problem at all, and can it solve it? And yeah, it'll just be good to hear more of your views on the specific aspects around commons. Like there's a lot of talk around tech and biodiversity intersection. There's a lot of talk about nature monitoring and biodiversity intersection. There's a lot of talk about forestry, NTFPs, and technology intersection. I'm not an expert in either of those three phrases I used post-technology, but how much of that can technology fundamentally solve, really? And how is that solutioning happening irrespective of technology? Would be things to talk about. I think Saurav, you wanted to.
I just wanted to add something to what Adi mentioned about the data jail, the OpenADK jail. See, the one question we may do well to consider with data use case technology, who is the consumer of that? I am yet to see many cases, even with the most well-designed systems, where the community is using that data to do something on their own. Data flows one way. Once in a while, we discussed in an earlier session examples of how it goes back to the community. But that also, the example we discussed, is going back to one CRP. Right? So the whole thing, if you go to the real world, Rishabh said, without technology, how things work. So who is the custodian of the commons without technology? Right? So it was the community always. So with the introduction of technology, are you strengthening their role as custodian? Then they should be the users of the technology. Not the donor, not the NGO. So even if we are doing an intervention, the mindset always is that of the savior. So you're saying, I will do some data collection, I will analyze it, I will improve my intervention and go back to the community. Yet to see many use cases where it's saying that it's designed from scratch to strengthen the community's own role, which was perhaps, I shouldn't say weak, which was at a certain stage without technology, and with technology, their own role is getting strengthened. So just food for thought to say who is the user and consumer. Is it the community? Is it you as an NGO? Is it your donor? And that will give you a lot of insight as to how to design for it.
I think, hi, I'm Saurav and XFES 2008-11 and currently working with Tetra Tech ARD with the Forest Plus program. So I take the point from TSRDS and what immediately my friend said there, that the tech should be for all. It should not be for some. And it should be accepted by all. And that involves community at the larger arena. So once I just give an example which will help relate it further, that once we started with Manrega, so I was part with Manrega since 2007, and then there is a technological enhancement in Manrega. Slowly the technology has improved a lot, but the work has deteriorated a lot also. So both are vice versa. Now we have immense applications there, and now the technology operator there, he's also confused what to do with what. So technology should not be at that level also. So it should be something which is tracked, and data should not be lost within data. So that is happening with Manrega. And then there was a slow change that we tried to bring in the Manrega functioning. How we brought in GIS. Dated 2016 in the year, we started with the process of incorporating GIS into how to improve the planning component of Manrega. Slowly, we all know the cadre that we are dealing with. We are talking about community. The people who are driving the community, they are not aware at the grassroots level. So I started with my career with Pradeep Brahma sir here in Odisha. And now what I see, totally through Manrega and other forest processes, that the community that we are dialoguing, it is very true statement that the technology should be for the community. They have to use it. We are not the ultimate users, but we are doing the same. We are using it here. We are using it here, and we are trying to make them use all, be it bilingual or any other language. They will never be able to use it until and unless we focus on one particular word, that is institutionalization. If you don't institutionalize, and what is the process of institutionalizing it, that has a key factor once you are talking at the development sector arena. What is that? We all are project focused. We have a 3-year project, 2-year project, 1-year project, something projects. The project duration is also reducing, and now Government of India is focusing on improving or enhancing the technical cooperation part. So with technical cooperation, how do you ensure quality recruitment, quality staffing at your organization level to interact with the community? So there has to be change the designing process altogether. And then we can talk about acceptance of tech at the grassroots level. Because a person who is connected with a particular person, let it be Shamlal. Shamlal is connected to a person with TSRDS, let it be, what's your name, sir? Nandalal, sir. So Shamlal is connected to Nandalal ji. So now Nandalal ji is focused that I have a project of 3 years and I am going to deal with Shamlal for 3 years. After Nandalal ji moves out, Shamlal ji is disconnected. And that disconnect affects the entire process very severely. So there has to be a transition process which needs to be in place. And that's how these forums are very important, where we discuss in developing synergies. So coming down to the parts of common and how we are doing, which Ashish sir will also add to, that how are we incorporating technology in building up commons. So in forest, we know all that there is a working plan. So how working plans are made, what is their functioning, we all know that this is a CCP job that was being done. Let me be very blunt, the cut, copy, paste work. So now, so as to move ahead with that and making the forest plans very important.
I'll just interrupt you for a moment because I want to ask this and maybe you can cover it while you're saying. It'll be nice to know, as a person who's a forestry expert and has worked with tech, how are the forest plans being made when there was no technology at all? There was no, let's imagine a world without mobile phones. And would love to know your thoughts on what an ideal forest planning process without a mobile phone in the process was like. I'm not saying we should go back there at all, but it'll be nice to know that and contrasting it to where tech can help.
Well, see, the forest management plans were brought in to more than production. It was, forest plans were made on how to basically do the, the cutting part. How to, where we get good healthy forest, we'll try to harvest it. So there was a thought-proven process there. And then there was transit walks involved, surveys involved, GBH was taken at the right places. There was then we know the square plots are there. Now it is in 2023 code. We have this circular plots came in. So now there is a huge gap in the understanding what we did in the past and what we are doing currently. So it was a square plot in 2014 code. Then the National Working Plan Code 2023 came in, where we have a circular plot design. Yeah.
So, but to precisely answer your question, see, forest management plans or the working plans are still being prepared using paper. So it's not that everywhere they're using tech. So, but in some parts, in some divisions, in some states where we have started working.
To ask, what is an ideal process on paper only? I mean,
yeah. So what they do is they lay sample plots inside the forest. They go there, they collect data on the flora and fauna. they come back, and that's how the inventory is prepared. Based on the inventory and based on the biotic pressure which is there, the fire incidents, the grazing pressure, the other human-related pressure. Based on that, you know what is there in the forest. So based on all that information, then you decide upon the prescriptions, how you want to manage that forest in a division, at a division level. So that's how forest management plans are prepared. And now the data collection is happening through technology use. So they go out there, they have a mobile app, they have all those forms, and then they use those forms to enter data which comes to a server. So that's how plans are prepared.
So precisely there are 14 forms which needs to be filled in a hard copy form. What we are trying to do, there is a one system application that has been designed and that has been accepted by MOFCC, and we are scaling up the operations across the country. And it is widely open and anyone can come and we can obviously help in scaling it up. So these 14 forms which Ashish sir was mentioning, they are in that app only. So there is a tier, there are many levels through which it is monitored also. Once it is collected, then the DFO login and other process, ranger login, and then it is finally approved. The data quality is checked. So data quality here, I just wanted to mention that this process is not done by AI. This is human intelligence used, and it can never be replaced by AI. So now the transition, how these transitions are being made and how are we thinking of streamlining the processes. So if it is our transition from 2014 code to 2023 working plan code, the staff has to be oriented across the country. They don't know. They are in the process of knowing it. The working plan somewhere which is going to expire, there it is very good that we are there and we are trying to explain and streamline the processes. But it's a vast country. So how do we spread out? How do we spread out to so many forest divisions? And how do we link up with them? So that's how we are focusing on the CB part, capacity building part, involving the community at this point of time for improving the data quality. That is also a major component here, but it has to be routed through forest department. So that is one of the systems. I think, Ashish sir, you can briefly tell about the other.
So just
also we're just already running.
So I'll just mention one tech tool that we had developed, and this was based on the experience that we had in MP especially, where a large number of farmers had trees on their farms, but they could not harvest those trees. Now, when we talk about promoting agroforestry, promoting or encouraging farmers to plant trees on their land, but what if they cannot harvest it? So how do you streamline? How do you kind of smoothen the procedure? And the problem is many of the tree species that they plant on their farmland also grow in the forest. So when you have harvested, cut them into logs, when you're transporting them, how do you ascertain the source of the? So then what we have done is we have developed a QR code based system where using the QR code, you can ascertain the source of that timber, where it is coming from. And that's a way to kind of encourage farmers to plant those trees and also to harvest them later on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think maybe I'll take one more. You wanted to say something. And then I have a few potential action items which I'd like to discuss.
Yes. Hello everyone. My name is Rudra and I represent Kalpavriksha. I wanted to, there were a lot of points, but I wanted to talk about our interventions that are at the interface of technology and how do we design them. So in our experience, I've realized that technology inherently cannot be a catalyst for change, cannot act as a catalyst for change. But it is crucially important to analyze some of the systems that we put around it. What is the kind of infrastructure that we put around it that enables that technology to be used in the way that it was intended to. And I'm not talking here just about how the communities would use it, but it's also important to, as a lot of the people said, as sir, you said, who do we think is the consumer of this technology? And if it's not the community, then we make it very clear that it's not the community. For example, if we create a platform that will cater to NDCs, and then we accordingly think about the information that we need to collect, and how does it create a repository of an evidence base, then it's fine. Then we don't integrate some of the questions that does not make sense to the communities, that does not allow them to participate in a way that we would want. My point is that when we are thinking of our interventions that are at the interface of technology, then we can't sail in both boats. Either we say that it is completely going to be for the communities and they are the ones who are going to drive it. So what the last speaker said, that is where the role of capacity building workshops, training workshops become very important, so that we don't just bring our intervention to the community, but we also bring communities to our intervention, the other way around. But it's ultimately very important to just be very clear in our articulation, so that it does not make it seem like we are also looking at any intervention at a national or a global level, while we are also trying to root it in ground. I think that sort of articulation in our objectives also clear out a lot of processes in our decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudraksh. Maybe I have a few takeaways and maybe potential action items I'd like to share, because we'd also like to close this early. We've already overshot on time. And maybe it'll be nice to hear, Prashant, some of your takeaways from the previous discussion. But so I think a couple of things which very pointedly come out with me is one of the things which Anshul has pointed out about the idea of what does appropriate technology for commons mean, and is that appropriate technology only supposed to be digital and software focused in nature, because technology is just not that, and there are larger, wider implications to the word tech. And maybe, which is a sort of a question of deliberation for the collaborators who are organizing something like this, that how do we create more spaces for other forms of technology, because all of them are needed for the larger commons agenda to be pushed. That's number one. I think the second thing is also around this idea that are we going problem first or are we going tech first? Like whether we're talking about the people's biodiversity registers, the forest planning processes, all these different processes which in some ways, for the lack of a better phrase, I may call commons positive processes. Tech can only be at best an enabler for those. What are the real challenges of them that look like on ground with or without the technology? And then how do we get technology to come in at the right place at the right time? Just building a space for it, but also the larger directory which you proposed, Prashant, around use cases, having this lens on that. Because and this is a problem I've just not seen in terms of commons, but having previously worked in the education space, there's this similar thought process of we'll personalize learning for everyone using AI. But probably personalizing learning is not what we're looking for at all. There are different challenges which need to be solved for. So really looking at it from a problem first lens. And when we're either making that use case directory, not just have a set of use cases and the apps or the tech that exists, but also the set of problems that exist. I mean, this garden of problems which eventually can fruit into something. Those are the two larger takeaways for me. Prashant, maybe if you'd like to share what came out of the previous session, because a lot of it is correlated, and then we could close this.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one very nice thing that came out from the previous session was that when we often talk about digital literacy and adoption issues of technology, the problem is not with the community, the problem is how we are designing the technology. The examples that came out were tech robustness around synchronization and data and handling and network. They were around usability. Examples came out. The issues came out around motivation, where you are sharing back or not, and when there's a real motivation or it's just drudgery. And then there were issues that came out around the large volumes of data. From an action perspective, what also came out, three things came out, is that one, common place, some central portal where people could share the applications they have and do some self-analysis of what's good, what's bad. And combined with partners like Goalkeep and few others, what could emerge out as good design principles through examples. Good and bad patterns and anti-patterns could emerge, what to do, what not to do in your own state, on your own tech space. The second thing that came out is that we are here about 300 odd organizations that are participating. And we felt there will be definitely overlaps in their technology needs. Is there an opportunity to understand collectively what the common needs are? And is there a rationalization, consolidation possible? Therefore, you can create robust, reusable, publicly accessible systems. Into this pool, organizations that already have IP they would like to share, they can also share into the pool. They could choose to charge for it, they could choose not to charge for it, that's their discretion. But the fact that a lot of organizations have already tech assets built means it makes no sense to rebuild them. And depending on their ownership and their own business models, they may choose to open source it or just share it for usage or share it for a fee. The third thing also that came out, around that, we could benefit from what the digital portal, the directory listing, which is both in terms of demand and supply side. So what the needs are, what the current assets are in terms of fulfilling, and who the current providers are who could then help you bridge the gap. So I'll send out notes to not just this group, but I'll work with Deborah, send these notes out, consolidating with Rishabh as to what the action plans could be. In some senses, you're creating a CSO tech usage community, right, where we can learn from each other, chip in with resources, and some needs and some solutions can be created. Yeah.
Yeah, just one small thing. See, using tech as an enabler, and how do you really use tech to take care of community concerns, even in a government system? Like, I'll give you one example, what we have done. You have a decision support system for selecting species what to be planted. Now, if you leave it, if suppose a system like that has been adopted, institutionalized by a government department, and you take care of the community concerns like you do the species ranking, and you put that at the back end. So when that system is throwing up species, you're taking care of the community concerns for, say, planting in forest land or non-forest land. So those are the ways that you can use technology to drive and change.